Labor has a new ad out and it's attacking Peter Dutton. The first thing I'd like to say is I'm just as much anti-Liberal as I am anti-Labor. I've been anti-Liberal all my life because that's the way I was brought up. And I'm anti-Labor because the Labor Party of today, you could pick up and move into Johnny Howard's Liberal Party, and they're pretty much the same two parties. As a staunch Labor supporter my whole entire life, that broke my heart. When I see a Labor Party leader in New South Wales using the law to break a railway strike, there's something really gone wrong with the Labor Party. They should change their name to the Business Party or Liberal Light or something like that. But they've certainly given away their right to be called the Labor Party. But they have this new ad out, and this new ad
These are all cost of living measures introduced by the federal Labor government because we understand the pressure families are under, and every little bit helps. But look who was opposed to every single one of them. Whichever way you look at it, you'll be worse off under Dutton.
Authorised P. Erickson, ALP Canberra.
Is all about the cost of living. And I want to go through all this thing because they're trying to convince you and me that we should vote for them on the basis that they've helped us out in the cost of living. As somebody who 3.5 years ago could go to the supermarket and buy my shopping, come home, go on the internet, pay all my bills and have a little bit of money left over, not a lot of money, maybe $20, $30. Now when I get my money, I have to decide what bills I'm not going to pay today or what bills I will pay today. And my food bill, which was budgeted at $200 a fortnight, I still buy $200 a fortnight worth of stuff, but I only have half as much in my shopping trolley. So the only cost of living measure that I remember, and they actually have that here, where are we? $300 off power bills. That was over a full year, by the way. For half the year we got $150, and then the other half we got another $150. That's it. That's the only cost of living measure that they have here. The Miles government, just before the last election, gave everybody in Queensland $1,000 off their electricity bill. That was a cost of living measure that worked. We got an election coming up, so how about banging up with me cost of living measure, please? $1,000 off my next electricity bill would be handy. Senior Johnny Howard's a Liberal Party. Every election, Johnny Howard had a handout for the people at the bottom. Where's our handout? It's election time. Tax cuts for every taxpayer. That's not a cost of living measure. That wasn't advertised as a cost of living measure. That's actually a tax cut for the rich that Labor couldn't sell, and so they slightly changed it. If I remember correctly, the Liberals voted for that. Free TAFE? No, we don't have free TAFE. Why do they have big free TAFE thing up there? We have free TAFE for select people. TAFE should be free, but it's not, and that's a ridiculous state of affairs. But to have that up there as a cost of living measure, that seems to be an education measure. So the next one is pay rises for aged care and childcare, which is very good. They deserve their pay rises and they should get their pay rises. But again, unless you're a worker in aged care or childcare, and the pay rises for childcare workers isn't for all childcare workers, but anyway, that's not a cost of living measure. So first three on the list, not cost of living measures. $300 off our power bills, thank you, really appreciated, but that's the only way you got to your $150 off a year. Wasn't that what we're meant to be saving on our power bills? My power bills have gone up $400 in the last 3 years. Free Medicare and urgent care clinics. I don't know how this is meant to be a cost of living measure. This is a Medicare levy. This is what government's meant to do. But if I want to go to one of these places, I've got to drive 250 kilometres down the road. So just cheaper, I don't get sick. Reducing HECS debts. Now, this is a spinny one. This isn't a cost of living measure either. This is because of the massive drive to eliminate HECS debts, just to make them go away. I have friends who have HECS debts that will never go away, and they'll be sitting there when they die, and any assets that they got die, the government will force their children to sell. If you're a student today, you don't get a reduction in your HECS debt. When you start your HECS debt next year, there's no reduction in that. In fact, students today should be pretty angry. I didn't see no 20% drop in university fees. Just saw a reduction in HECS debt for people who have HECS debt, not for the people who have HECS debt tomorrow. Cheaper medicines. I have no idea what they mean by cheaper medicines. So they allow some medicines to be double scripted, but unless you take medicines, it's not a cost of living measure, is it? Either way, it's not making the stuff in my supermarket cheaper. It's not making my bills cheaper. It's only a cost of living measure for sick people. But yeah, what cheaper medicines? Point out those cheaper medicines. You can't just say cheaper medicines. Cheaper childcare. Now this is spinny. Labor's going to try and sell over the next election that they provided childcare for all children in Australia, but they're not providing childcare centres. They're not providing staff. They're leaving it to private enterprise. My question is, why would private enterprise come to Winnington, open up a childcare centre when they can't make any money apart from the government money? Like, it's going to cost a lot more money to run a childcare centre in a lower socio-economic services. So what they're saying is childcare centres for people that don't live in lower economic areas. What they're saying is that if you have a child that's not in a lower economic area, chances are we can guarantee your child 3 days of childcare, which isn't childcare, it's early child learning. But because it's being left to private enterprise and the government has nothing in place to actually open childcare centres where childcare centres wouldn't be profitable, all the kids in poverty are going to be left out. And quite frankly, Albo seems to have a real hang-up about poor people, maybe because he comes from Housing Commission, which I doubt that story. It's all a very good story he has. I was raised by a single mother in Housing Commission. He seems to hate people who live in Housing Commission. He seems to hate poor people. The cheaper childcare little thing up here shows it when you actually look into that. And free increases to the minimum wage. Is this like when the government, or it doesn't matter what type of government, jumps up and down and talks about how a new drug's on the PBS, as if the government can actually reach into the people who decide what's on the PBS and force them to put a drug on it? That's meant to be fully independent. And if that's not fully independent, then there's something seriously wrong with our government. But the same with free increases to the minimum wage. What happened here was the bodies that look at the minimum wage went, that's way too low, and raised it. It's had nothing to do with the government. So the government takes credit when these people give increases to the minimum wage. Now, the other thing about these increases to the minimum wage, inflation's way higher than those increases. Right, which means all these people who had increases in the minimum wage in the 3 years that we've had Albo as the government, those increases have actually meant nothing to what they can buy at the shop. So out of all of these 9 things listed on this advert about cost of living relief, the only cost of living relief bill on the whole thing is $300 off power bills. The Labor government in Queensland did better than that when they were trying to buy my vote with $1,000 off me electricity. This quick thing's just to point out how Labor's going to try and con you. Labor's no different to the Liberal Party, and when it boils down to it, for pay rises for childcare workers and aged care workers, Labor and Liberal voted against a motion in the Senate put forward by the Greens to give those workers a 25% increase. The only people who didn't vote for that was Labor and Liberal together. So if Labor really wanted to give pay rises to aged care workers and childcare workers, and it's only for childcare workers that work for companies that sign agreements with the federal government. So this is a con too. Right, all of this is a con. The free TAFE, what free TAFE? Does everyone get free TAFE? Go and enrol in TAFE and see if you get a free course. These urgent care clinics, yes, they're a good thing, but they certainly have nothing to do with cost of living. Cheaper childcare, what about the people without children? Cheaper medicines, what about the people who aren't sick? Free increases the minimum wage, but you're still further backwards when inflation's taken into account. Tax cuts for every taxpayer, but we still have 1 million children missing out on meals every day. Think about that. Like, how's that help people who need help? People who seriously need help. The 1 in 5 mothers that miss out on a meal so that their child can eat. The 1 in 8 children who are missing a meal tonight. The children who have intellectual difficulties due to malnutrition because the government pays people poverty money, yet they sit here and sprout their cost of living policies. It's an insult. It's an insult to every single person in this country that we have 2 parties who will sit there and go, look what I can do for the cost of living, while every time I drive to Innisfail, and I hope these people have gotten through the floods okay, there's a family living in a tent. Like, they've been there for months and months and months now, and when I asked a social worker, when's Housing Commission going to give them a house, their exact answer to me was, Housing Commission aren't building any houses here, they'll have to wait for somebody to die. That's the country we live in. So, I don't see anything on this list that says I'll helping homeless people have enough money in their pockets so they can not be homeless anymore. In fact, the money that they give someone on Social Security pretty much guarantees they'll be homeless. So cost of living measures, they haven't put any in place. Right? It's like they're pissing on my back and telling me it's raining, and it's rather an insult. I'm going to let you go now, and thanks for putting up with me. Goodbye.